Hello, welcome to First Door's eLearning tutorial, leading a team approach to continuous improvement. So when we think about continuous improvement, I'd like you to ponder on how inspired is your leadership. So what we've got, this picture in front of us is showing a blinkered approach where we've got a team that are putting one foot in front of the other, following a very uninspired leader. And the danger of this picture is groupthink, where everyone is doing the same old ways. They're staying in their comfort zone and not thinking outside the box at all. So I guess what we've got there is the same old thinking and the same old results, which is exactly the opposite to critical thinking for continuous improvement. So it's all about the desire to think about why we do what we do and how we're doing it. And so we're thinking about best outcomes for children and quality aligned with the National Quality Framework. So when we look at this, it's really thinking about the Early Years Learning Framework Principle 5, ongoing learning and reflective practice. And the very first sentence there says, educators continually seek ways to build their professional knowledge and develop learning communities. For good reason, because we want this continuous improvement. So as an inspired leader, it is about taking responsibility for quality improvement. And when we analyze the word responsibility, it's actually our ability to respond in a way that transforms our values into actions. So what we want to be thinking about there is choosing our response as a conscious choice based on our values for quality early childhood education and care and quality improvement. So that's very much thinking about not being reactive and instead being proactive, because we understand this lovely quote by Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He says, act proactively or be acted upon. So yeah, that's staying stagnant and actually in effect going backwards. So let's take a little think for a moment about reactive management. I always imagine it as a manager, a leader that's constantly putting out fires, constantly reacting. So I'd like you to ponder for a moment on the things in your circle of concern that you're reactive to. Stephen Covey talks about having the circle of concern, and how big is it basically in proportion to your circle of influence, the things that you are proactively working towards, which in this case we're thinking about quality improvement. So let's imagine you've got a big list of concerns happening. There's crises, there's low motivation, there's burnout, there's illness, there's ineffectiveness. We've got relationship issues, low motivation, all these things going on, which are constantly soaking up your time. So you've got a huge circle here of concern. If this is the case, your circle of influence will be quite small. So your time to be proactive is lessened and ineffective. So what we're aiming to do is broaden your circle of influence where you're acting proactively, making proactive decisions and actions towards quality improvement. So that involves creating a plan and thinking about the various things that create quality improvement. So let's look at leadership qualities. How are you going at these? If you run yourself through these, how do you go with communicating quality requirements within your team and creating that quality-orientated culture? as far as your team goes, what's the commitment level to quality improvement and continuously reflecting with a view to improvement? How do you go about planning? This involves lots of collaboration. We really want quality improvement to come from the team, to come from the families, and for everyone to feel involved. So that way these goals and strategies will actually be much more likely to be successful. How about the actions that are taken by this proactive leader, you, for checking the processes, for monitoring and evaluating performance, and for identifying and diagnosing, taking action to overcome problems? So all of this takes a big effort to create a culture within your service, and understanding that that culture will effectively define the behavioural norms, the attitudes within your team, and the accepted work practices. So a huge part of this is having that shared vision and a philosophy. That's that live document that's summing up the vision, the direction, the expectations, and what your service really holds near and dear and values. The other side of this is the shared values and beliefs. How aligned are these to the early years learning framework, to the principles stated there, and to the practices within the early years learning framework? And that's something to really talk through at team meetings. And then to the ethical standards. When we look at the code of ethics, one of the points in relation to colleagues is that we'll participate in a lively culture of professional inquiry to support continuous improvement. So just thinking about what you do as a proactive leader to really build this culture within our service that will support quality improvement. So we talked about collaborating, and that part of that is identifying the requirements and the satisfaction levels of our key stakeholders. So of course a major player is ASEQA through the National Quality Standard ratings, but let's think about the customers. What's their satisfaction level like? Where are their needs? And how do you find out what they are? So obviously digital is becoming a huge source of information now from families, but the good old chat, the informal chat and questions go a long way as well, as long as you jot down that feedback. So thinking about random quality checks you can do from children's perspective and families' perspective. A lot of this is done in your morning walkthroughs or your daily walkthroughs, where you're hearing and seeing and picking up the vibes that are going on. Important to, when you're thinking about improvement, always benchmark your service according to higher quality centres. So look to the centres that are rated at a higher level from you for inspiration, because this is where you're going to get your inspired leadership, your vision from. Really encourage you to really understand that you can't achieve this on your own. It's too big a burden to carry. You're going to need your team. So thinking about staff and management, that you've got really clear processes for performance appraisal, discussing the budget, discussing the business plan, that you're seeking feedback from your team members, from management, and you're taking staff grievances and complaints seriously and really seeking their input. So all of these systems, but in particular the practice of reflection or critical reflection, is a huge information source that you need to be really tuning through and just keeping that wheel active and really making use of the information that comes in and understanding that all of this actually feeds continuous improvement, and that then enables the change. That you still want to get feedback on the changes you implement. So it is an ongoing cycle very much. When we've mentioned collaboration is the key, and the ability to get your team on board to support this quality improvement within this culture that you're creating. Let's just for a moment think of a leader you've experienced that's authoritative and the directing, controlling, without any meaningful participation. So you're not going to get the vibe of this photograph you're seeing here when you've got this kind of leadership. But what happens to the team when they're not involved in decisions? And you basically going back to that first image of the blinkered, follow the leader very sullenly. Instead, we're going for this kind of pyramid of strength created through involvement. So we've got much higher support where people feel involved. We've got team members taking ownership, and that's really helpful for strategies to achieve goals, and feeling much more committed because they're on board. So the good part about this is we tend to lessen the competitiveness and have people working more collaboratively when they're shared goals. Obviously, having people's insight, sharing ideas, sharing understandings is much better, or actually understanding what the issues are at the grassroots. And from all this, we can make better decisions and have higher commitment to the actions needed. So when we're thinking about our team, we've got various tools. We also discuss Belbin's team roles to identify team strengths, but this is another approach, Gardner's multiple intelligences, and this is useful. We think about this with children in our educational program, what their strengths are, but also very much in leadership to think about what your team's strengths are, and they could be any one of these or more. So really sorting out, for an example, your naturalist is more than likely going to be the person that is more engaged in the outdoor program, more engaged in the sustainability, environmental responsibility aspects of the national quality standard. So find your people that have got strengths, have got passion, have got interest in various ways, and lead that into particular elements or standards within the educational program or just in the national quality standard. So I'd like to end off this little tutorial with this lovely quote by Al Kondalushi, and it's all about teamwork. Your success, your ability to keep improving and keep working towards your vision of a high quality early childhood service all depends on the relationships that you're creating, because the only way to success is through relationships and when we share. Thank you.